Hi, guys. This is for Friday, October 29th. Happy Friday. And you're going to want to put the date at the top. Today's date is October 29th, 2021, so 10/29/21. Okay, and title is Road Trips. Road Trips. Go ahead and pause the video while everybody gets ready. Okay. So the question for today is, do you like road trips? I will tell you, I love road trips, but anyway. Why or why not? What do you think the first road trip looked like? Okay. So the first ever road trip, what do you think it might have looked like? Okay, you have 5 minutes. Go ahead and answer that, and then you can discuss it. Go ahead and pause the video. All right. Today's agenda. You've got the road trip writing prompt, and then we're going to do our main idea daily practice again. And today we're going to talk about Inca engineering. Okay. Prompt for today is about, well, you tell me what it's about. Did you know that giraffes are the tallest animals in the world? They are unique in other ways too. For one thing, they sleep only about 20 minutes each day, and usually not more than 5 minutes at a time. They have to remain alert for predators. Also, every giraffe's coat is unique and varies in color from white to nearly black, depending on what they eat and where they live. All right. So, first question, guess what? What type of text structure is being used here? Go ahead and pause the video. Okay, so if you said description, you are correct, right? What is the main idea of the passage? Go ahead and pause the video. And then how do you know as well? All right, here comes the big reveal. All right, the main idea is that giraffes are unique animals, okay? And it talks about how they are unique in a couple sentences here, okay? And again, if you go into today's agenda in social studies, you will see that there is chapter 6, okay? So you have the chapter 6, and then you have the Inca engineering. And if you know how to split your screen, of course you can do that while we're working. All right, and we can pause while everybody gets ready, and I'll begin reading. Okay, chapter 6, Inca engineering. The first section we're going to read is the Royal Road. It's one thing to conquer many lands. It's another thing to keep control of what you've conquered. Remember how the ancient Romans held their empire together? You might not remember that because we didn't talk about it, and I doubt you've studied it yet, so it's fine. But anyway, they built roads all across it. The roads made it possible for government officials to travel around the empire. Roads also encouraged trade. Most importantly, the roads allowed the army to travel quickly. This way, they could put down a rebellion or enforce the emperor's rule. The Inca knew nothing of ancient Rome, but they, too, were great road builders. Their royal road stretched over 2,000 miles. It ran from the northern end of the empire to the southern tip. It was the longest road in the world until the 1800s. The Inca Empire was linked by a vast network of well-built roads. Check it out. Okay. The Royal Road was 24 feet wide in most places. Although it crossed mountains, valleys, deserts, and swamps, long stretches were straight as an arrow. Markers measured distances along the road. Trees shaded the road. A canal provided water for travelers. There were even roadside storehouses where travelers could get food at the end of the day. Parts of the Royal Road were made of packed dirt. Others parts were paved. Inca engineers fitted paving stones together like pieces of a jigsaw puzzle. Modern builders use mortar, a cement like material, to keep stones together. The Inca did not use any mortar. Instead, they cut stones so exactly that they fit snugly together. The Royal Road shows the great skills of the Inca builders. These builders had no earth moving machinery. They did not have horses or oxen to pull wagons. They did not even have the wheel. Everything was done by hand. Yet the Inca were able to build roads so sturdy, not even heavy rains or flash floods could destroy them. The Royal Road was the main Inca road, but there were others. At every valley, east west roads crossed the Royal Road. The Royal Road was like the spine. The crossroads were like the nerves branching out from it. The network of roads linked all the parts of the empire together. And then I'm just going to go back to this illustration here. The Inca builders cut and assembled the stone with great precision to build roads and other structures. Pretty cool. So today we're taking a little break from summary. Happy Friday. And you're going to go back and look at that section and you're going to answer these questions. So remember, we're restating and answering. So why did the Inca build the road? Let's take a second to think about how that can be restated. All right, and answer it. I'll let Mr. Polly decide if he wants to have you guys answer that with him or have you do it on your own. So I'd start with restating and then answering. And then we'll do the same with number 2. How long was the Royal Road? Okay, so take a minute, pause it, and decide, Mr. Polly, however you want to do that. If you want to have them, give them a few minutes to answer the question, or if you want to go over it with them, that is fine. All right. Oops, wrong tab. Okay. So the next section is called Bridges Built for the Centuries. All right. To build roads through mountains and across streams, the Inca had to build lots of bridges. Like the roads, these bridges are marvels of engineering. A bridge built over the Apurimac, River in Peru is a fine example. It was built over a steep river gorge in 1350. It was a suspension bridge held together by heavy strands of rope. The ropes were replaced every 2 years. This amazing bridge was in service from 1350 until 1890. For more than 500 years, the bridge was maintained and used by the Inca. And then you see the Inca were master bridge builders. Check out that cool looking bridge. It was then used by the Spanish and finally the people of Peru. It was one of the greatest achievements of the Inca engineers. It gained wider fame when it was featured in the classic novel The Bridge of San Luis Rey by American writer Thornton Wilder. Okay, so for that section, you have one question. What is considered one of the greatest achievements of the Inca engineers? All right, so you're going to restate and answer. You can pause and restate and answer, or however you'd like to do that. Okay. The next section is called Mountain Staircases. The Inca also used their engineering know-how to help them farm in the Andes. Farming on a mountainside is challenging. The incline makes every task, plowing, planting, and harvesting, very difficult. In heavy downpours, water runs downhill and washes out crops. The Inca had to find a way to grow crops on the slopes of the Andes. Their solution was to cut terraces into the sides of the mountains. The terraces created level fields that would be planted and harvested just like valley fields. The Inca also built irrigation systems. This allowed them to bring water to the terraced fields. All right, so for that section, You have one question. You're restating and answering. How did the Inca solve the problem of growing crops on top of the Andes? So in case you didn't notice, that section right there was done in a problem solution, right? And we know that because we see their solution and they talked about what the problem was prior to that, what made it challenging and difficult. Okay. So the question is, how did they solve the problem? All right. And I kind of pointed the answer out if you were paying attention. So restate and answer that either together or on your own. I'll let Mr. Polly decide that one. And pause. All right, not finally, but continuing on, you have a section called Keeping It All Together. All right, so the Inca had an advanced road system, but they had no written language. How could they possibly run an empire of 12 million people that spanned the length of a continent without writing? The Inca came up with some clever strategies. For instance, they invented a means for counting and record keeping using a quipu. Okay, so that's a picture of a quipu right there. Uh, a quipu was a piece of string that had shorter strings of various colors dangling from it. By tying knots in a certain pattern on a quipu, an official could record how many warriors were headed for a village or how much corn was in a storehouse. The Inca also used messengers trained to run short distances to carry news. Since the Inca had no written language, these messengers did not carry a written note. Instead, a runner memorized his message and sprinted to a stallion a mile away or so. There, the next runner would be waiting. Without slowing the pace, the second messenger ran alongside the first messenger to hear the message. Then the second messenger continued on, kind of like telephone, it seems like, right? And the system was fast. A message could travel 150 miles in a day. This meant news could travel all the way from Quito to Cusco in a little over a week. In the 1860s, the famous Pony Express riders of the American West were only able to cover about 200 miles a day. And they rode on horseback. And there you see the fast Inca runners were able to move messages quickly throughout the full length of the empire. There's a caption there in that illustration. It's kind of a cool illustration there. All right, so looking back at our questions, we have keeping it all together. So we're going to restate and answer these questions. What was the name of the record-keeping strategy that the Inca invented? And how did the quipu work? Is the second question. Okay? All right. See, I keep going to the wrong tab. All right. Next section is called City in the Clouds. Another marvel of Inca engineering is the famous city of Machu Picchu. Machu Picchu is a mountain fortress 7,000 feet above sea level, located about 50 miles northwest of Cusco. It sits in a high valley between two peaks of the Andes. Today, visitors can stand in the center of Machu Picchu. From there, they can see the ruins of an open plaza, a temple, and a place where archaeologists discovered Inca skeletons. The surrounding hillside is terraced for farming. Archaeologists estimate that Machu Picchu was built in the mid 1400s. For years, it was a vacation spot for Inca emperors. Today, it is the leading tourist attraction in Peru. Machu Picchu is not an easy place to visit. Tourists now take a railroad partway up the mountain. Then they follow a steep, twisting road to the top. Energetic hikers can walk on an old Inca trail that climbs up the steep slopes of the Andes. So there in these Machu Picchu, you see the ruins and how high they are up in the Andes mountains there. Pretty cool, right? All right, so going back here, this section, I'd like you to summarize the information in the paragraph. So looking for a one-sentence summary. And so I want you to think on your own of the who, what, where, why, when, and how, and what's answered there. And put that into a sentence summary, okay? And you can pause the video. All right. This last section is called Expanding the Empire. Okay. So, like the Aztec, the Inca built their empire by conquering other people. They also sacrificed human beings for religious purposes. However, human sacrifice seems to have been less widespread in the Inca Empire. The Inca focused more on turning conquered people into loyal subjects. When conquered people were cooperative, the Sapa Inca made few changes. In architects, Inca architects and managers went to new regions. Their job was to oversee the building of roads and temples. The Inca taught their language to the local people. They also asked them to worship the sun god, Inti. The worship of local gods was allowed. Sometimes those gods were even part of the Inca religion. If conquered people were uncooperative, the Sapa Inca moved swiftly. He shipped troublemakers from their homes to villages. There, they were surrounded by local Inca citizens. He also shipped loyal Inca citizens to live among the conquered people. In this way, the Sapa Inca was able to quickly build a large and unified empire. This empire would endure until the Spanish conquistadors made their fateful appearance. Dun, dun, dun. Okay. Question here is, how did the Inca expand their empire? Okay, so you're going to restate and answer that question. All right. So, just for fun, I wanted to let you guys know that now I'm not talking about the first road trip of the Incas because I have no idea. There's no way to know when that took place or any of that. But if you were curious, and I once was, who took the first ever road trip across like the United States? Well, that person was Horatio Nelson Jackson. Okay. And there are some YouTube videos that you can watch. There's actually a documentary that is on Prime Video that you can watch if you're interested in that sort of thing, just for fun. Okay. Okay. So for today's work, you're going to turn in what you just did, the Inca Engineering, and in reading, you're finishing up your main idea and details with the ice cream cones. Okay, so that was it started on Wednesday, and you had through today to finish that up. So you should have that completed today and turned in. You have time to go back, check on any missing work or anything that you did not get to finish earlier this week for today, and then of course anything you have for Mr. Polly. And that is it for today. You guys have a great weekend, and I will see you on Monday.